Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Classroom to Corner Office Career Talks with Chris. Today, I'm joined by Ben Johnson, who is here today to talk about how he has progressed into a role as a sales engineer with Pittsburgh Air Systems while having opportunities along the way that may have provided options that he never expected or that maybe many people expected he would take. So we're here to listen to Ben's career journey, how he got to where he is, and maybe what things look like into the future. So Ben, thanks for joining today. Appreciate you taking time to share a little bit about how you got to where you are and maybe what some of these next steps are.
Sure, Chris. Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, I think it's really interesting thing of what you're doing here for, the younger generation or even someone who's maybe looking at career change. It's like something that I wish I had, 5, maybe even 10 years ago. So, yeah, as you mentioned, I'm a sales engineer, by trade. I do not have a mechanical engineering degree. So it was a unique situation. And it kind of goes back to having people that believe in you, that give you opportunities and, proving yourself at the same time. So, yeah, I mean, I'll touch on how I got to that point and kind of, in a nutshell, I guess. But yeah, I graduated from West Liberty in December of 2020 during COVID. So, it was on a slideshow. I still have this screenshot of my name popping up on the TV or whatever, the phone. And I grew up in the family business, which, is a whole interesting dynamic. I would have been third generation, but I decided to pursue other options than what I had. At the time, I was looking for a job for different reasons. And actually, someone I went to school with at the time said, "Hey, my company's hiring for an estimator." And I was like, okay, I didn't know anything about HVAC at the time, which is the industry I'm in. And I didn't, I knew construction because of the family business, but HVAC was foreign to me. And for whatever reason, they gave me an opportunity as an estimator, and I was in that role for just shy of 2 years. I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to learn more and more, and then it led to more opportunities. So right about the 2-year mark, I got into inside sales, or what we call sales support, where you work with an outside salesperson and just do ordering, things like that. So I did that for another just about 2 years or so, and then I got opportunity to have some customers, and I guess, and maybe see what you can do type of situation. Actually, just this year I was promoted to sales engineer or outside sales. Everyone refers to it differently, where I have a customer list and I'm selling to those customers. But it was just an odd, and again, I didn't mention this, but I have a business degree. I mentioned I did not have a mechanical engineering degree, which is like the stereotypical requirement for that position. You should be, in most cases, a lot of companies wouldn't even look at you. So I was lucky, like I mentioned, to have someone who believed in me and a company that gave me an opportunity, to progress. I'm the type of person that I always wanted to keep growing. I know that's not everyone's outlook. Some people want to get into a role where they're, like what they do and, grow in that role, where I wanted to grow into sales because I like talking to people and I liked that end of the business. That was my path to where I'm at currently, and that happened in just about a 5-year window. So it was interesting, and like I said, I had great mentors that really helped along the way and sped up that process.
Yeah, and I know, right, that you graduated during COVID in 2020, but you also had another kind of obstacle or challenge to overcome during your collegiate career, right? You had to change schools.
Yeah, yeah. So I went to Alderson Broaddus University. Act like I'm getting old. I feel like I am. That would have been 2016 for for 2 years, and I played soccer there. It was a really cool school. Like, it fit me well. It was kind of who I am. I played on the soccer team. Like I said, made a lot of good friends, and I decided to transfer in the middle of my college career, and uh, West Liberty, just, I guess I'll give them a little bit of a shout out. I think they still have it, but I know when I was there, they had a metro rate, which was incredible value. And I decided to commute because of where I lived. And it just really helped me out financially to get through college and get, a really good degree for a good value. And, like I said, I commuted for and about a year, maybe a semester, and then uh, funny, my degree went online before COVID, and then COVID happened, so I didn't have much of a choice. But yeah, graduate in December of 2020, right kind of in the height towards kind of the end of all the things happening. But yeah, it was interesting for to say the least.
Yeah, making that transition, right? That had to have helped kind of, whether again by choice or whether it was the best option for you at the time,
Yeah,
had to help you with just life transitions as well, right? Because you had to,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
You were going in with a similar degree all the same, right? In business. So
Yes,
for you, was that transition and having to navigate going from school to school and maybe assessing what was the best option for you? Do I need to change degrees? Do I need to consider something different? Commuting versus, being in a collegiate student athlete and probably, getting some on-campus housing or other housing options, right? Did that transition, do you think, prepare you for maybe some other life transitions down the road?
100%. I mean, I made a lot of decisions kind of. I guess I could say like at a split second because when I initially transferred, it was over summer or whatever. And at the beginning, I was gonna play soccer at West Liberty. Like I was set on that, and I was gonna, you know, excuse me, I was planning on commuting, but that was just because of just my situation and my decision I needed to make. But I had I was gonna play soccer, like I said, on West Liberty's team, and then I got a call from the coach, and I was just like, I don't feel like doing it anymore. It was kind of like a split second decision, and I don't really know why, but something just told me, I played for years. I knew I wasn't going to be professional or anything. I was a good player, but it just wasn't my path. So I had some injuries, had some surgeries, and I just decided my time playing was done. So it actually opened up more opportunities because I got into coaching. You know, uh, like I mentioned, I would have been the third generation business owner, which I own a business on the side that allowed me to start that business during that same time because obviously playing a sport takes a lot of your time away. So I got into coaching, got into my own business all while commuting at first to West Liberty and then finishing my degree online. So, that change in life opened opportunities. It forced me to make decisions. What was best for me? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? And then, yeah, of course, like even personal decisions, career decisions, I learned, just to go with your gut in a lot of situations, go what you're feeling, what your mind and body's telling you. And, so far that's worked out for me. I mean, like I mentioned, I'm 5 years into my career, but I've always trusted my I guess instinct or feelings, and I don't really have any regrets. I wouldn't have changed anything, to this point.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's a good kind of discussion and lead into transition in life, right? And how you can teach yourself things in your personal life that maybe apply to your career journey. So I think that's good
Yeah.
perspective.
It,
Now, again, you said relatively early into your career journey here, somebody had some faith in you and gave you an opportunity, a mentor that saw, right? Whether through observing or just through discussions, felt confident that you were going to find your way and be successful in the work that you're doing. When you did get that opportunity, what do you think were, whether that's skills that you had or whether these were traits or whether this is a work ethic that helped you stand out maybe in those first 6 months to 2 years, that
sure.
validated that faith that somebody had in you and helped you kind of continue to progress from that entry level role to inside sales, now to outside sales or sales engineer?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I, I think it's a combination of everything. I mean, you have you know, your work ethic's a big one, and your willingness to learn. And I think one thing that I guess I like to think makes me a little bit different is I like making mistakes because that's when I learn. I'm not afraid to make a mistake. I'm not afraid to own it. I'm not afraid to get the feedback from the mistake, and have those, uncomfortable conversations because I know that's, in my life and in my career, when I've screwed up the biggest is when I've actually taken the biggest steps towards my personal or professional goals. Obviously you have to check all the boxes to, and everyone's idea of success is different, but in my mind, you have to check all those boxes. And I give it back to my family. I mean, my grandfather and my father, and just growing up watching them work, starting to work myself at a young age, and running equipment and helping my dad and whatever. Like, I saw how hard they worked, and it kind of just was instilled in me from a young age. And I also really like to work, which sometimes that might be weird, but I really enjoy what I do, and I enjoy doing it. So that helps a lot. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, you know, that's a challenge in itself. So I kind of got lucky in the way that, all my efforts I felt were recognized for the right reasons, going from someone who knew nothing about my industry to just being a sponge and trying to learn as much as I could and challenging myself and giving presentations that, were probably above my head at the time, but it did show that I was willing to learn and I was willing to figure things out when it wasn't clear. And finding those unique paths, or maybe what differentiates a candidate for a position.
Yeah, and being a sponge, that's something I talk about, whether it's in the classroom or whether, prior to me teaching at the college level, whenever I was supervising people, right? You're that first 2 weeks to month and even more sometimes, I used to tell people, "Just be a sponge." Like, ask questions, take all this information in. If you don't understand, just ask, because you're not expected to be perfect in the job or understand every piece of it, especially at that entry level area. So, for you kind of getting into this industry, what do you think was that largest or the most steep learning curve that you experienced? Again, entering an industry that you were unfamiliar with. And was that about the industry itself, or was it just about working, right? Because you stepped into a role in an industry that was your first, we'll say, your full time job out of college.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I understood business and, say, having a job or working just from how I grew up. But, you know, the industry, like the learning curve, I would say is, I feel like not many people know anything about HVAC. I mean, I remember sitting in the interview room. I was like, how can I prepare for this interview? Like, I'm looking up the ceiling, like, yeah, I know air comes out of those things, but that's about it. I don't know much else. So that's a huge learning curve. Is I was in an area that was totally unfamiliar, and I think is unfamiliar for a lot of people. It's just not as, I guess it's a specialized area. It's not something that people know a lot about. It's just a unique industry. It's complicated. There's a lot of codes. There's a lot of design criteria. Like, there's just a lot. There's so much going on that you know I don't know, people in other industries just don't understand. So yeah, I think it also helped me though, for that being my first job, is because I really didn't have, like, it wasn't like I was 20 years into a career where I knew something very well. I was fresh. I was new. I could learn those skills. I'm not saying someone couldn't, but I was fresh, right out of school, and just ready for a challenge, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And approaching that challenge in that light, especially accepting constructive feedback, being willing to be wrong, maybe more than you're right, especially early on there.
Oh yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah, and I know, right, and this may be a little bit of a sore spot here. Being willing to learn from your mistakes. I see that in your golf game every time we go out, right? But
Oh yeah,
continue,
100%.
yeah, continue
But
to improve though.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, but that's, I know you say that as a joke, but it's real. I mean, how many times have I asked you, you're a much better golfer than I am, but it's like, hey, what am I doing wrong here? And you've helped me in certain ways, and that relates back to anything you're doing, and you have a mentor, a personal mentor, just a professional mentor, a hobby, anything, a coach. If you are willing to listen to that person, you can make yourself better. And then, one day you become the mentor. I see, like, I can use coaches as an example. Coaching is, at first, when I was a new coach out of playing soccer in college, I was mentored by people. I made connections with them, and you listen to them and you learn, and then you find your own way. It's no different in your professional world where, I had really great mentors, and I owe them a lot, personally and professionally. And I was willing to absorb what they were teaching me, but at the same time, you have to find your own path too. You have to be unique in your own ways and find what works for you. And something I've always tried to do is, like, I take a lot from people as far as information or knowledge, and then I put it together, and then I just make it my own. Because obviously, you're not going to agree with absolutely everything that someone says. You have to put your own spin on it. But mentorship is huge in everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, and calling on that, and whether you want to shout out a specific person or whether you want to pose a situation where mentorship played a crucial or integral role to your, whether that was your early career journey or whether it's just in life. Can you
There,
recount a situation where, like, I remember this discussion or this person really helped guide me down a path that has helped make you who you are as a person or as a professional today?
I mean, there's so many, and I was lucky to have them. Someone willing to do that for you, because not it takes a special person to be a mentor. Not everyone wants to be one. I mean, my dad's my biggest mentor in my life. He's taught me so much about how to work. How to try to make the right decisions, how to do the right thing. And my mom, from a personal standpoint, has been a mentor in like shaping my personality. And obviously, my parents are just huge mentors for me. On the personal level and professional. I mean, obviously, things they've taught me have led me to where I'm at now in my career. But there's way too many examples to make or to name one from them. It's because almost 28 years now of learning from them, and I'll never stop as long as you know I have the opportunity that I'm going to learn from them. But professionally, I mean, I can remember instance early on in my career, and it had me questioning myself. Am I doing the right thing? Should I go back to excavating? I know excavating. I grew up in it. Should I should I just go back that direction? I made had a made a mistake on a job, and it was pretty sizable, and it was kind of like in the streak of a few. So like your confidence is taking a hit because it's not just like a one off. You're like, man, I'm like 6, 8, 10 months, however many months into my career, into my job. I'm like, it's just all coming up. And like the nature of the job is, as an estimator, especially, it's a tough job. You put a quote out, you don't know really how accurate it is until the job gets awarded, and then kind of figure out what happens there. And that timeline from the jobs I started quoting to when those mistakes started showing up was about right. 6 to 10 months down the road, and I had a big one with a coworker of mine, um, and he went about it the right way, which I respect greatly. And he didn't get mad and flip out. He was like, "Hey, you're going to learn from this. You're going to do better, and then you won't do it again. You'll won't make that same mistake twice." That's a big thing. Is if you make a mistake, try not to make the same mistake twice. Try to improve, try to remember, take notes, whatever the case is. But that one mistake in particular on what I'm referring to was probably my biggest growth point, because it actually led to me learning from some other people as well on, certain scenarios. So,
Yeah, and like that's a big thing that especially when new professionals when they crack into any industry, whether that's right out of college or whether people are making career shifts, don't make the same mistake twice. Right?
yeah,
That's the one thing that you can control is learn from it and don't repeat it. So I think that's valuable advice for anybody at any point in their career. And even people that are experienced and seasoned, they may come across a unique situation that they don't handle perfectly, but it's probably going to be informed, even if it is a mistake, and it's informed mistake based on years or decades of experience that sometimes you just have to live with in your career. Right? That's part of
yeah,
the career growth journey. So you talked about making decisions, maybe some high stakes decisions, right, in an estimator role, and I'm sure that you make some other high stakes decisions in how you communicate with current clients, potential clients, or leads. But outside of that, right, you also have your own side hustle, your own side business, and make some other decisions related to local government. So let's kind
yeah,
of dive into what you do outside of your professional life, and let's go into the local government. And how did you get involved in local government? And what has that taught you about working with, in this case, not just the public, but the people that you live with?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I always had an interest in it. I mean, I don't really have the desire to be a politician at the county or state. Like, I don't have a desire like that. But I've always, speaking of mentors, and my mom always had me volunteering as a young person through her work, through local organizations and whatever. So I always volunteered. And when I was 16, I became a junior firefighter. at the local fire department. So that was kind of like my, I guess, opportunity to get into the township type stuff. I mean, I was a junior firefighter until I went to college, and then obviously, like, I kind of put a wrench in things, and I stepped away. And I've been back to help at bingos and things like that, fundraisings and volunteering. But my path kind of switched where unfortunately, someone passed away, so I was appointed to fill that position by the current board, which that would have been, I'd say, man, about 3 years ago now. So um, I think I'm coming up with my fourth year. It all kind of goes together. But I was appointed at first, and then I had to win the election that same year to finish the term that was open. I mentioned that I wanted to run, but it was something like, yeah, I might, like I was actually talking to one of my friends who is involved at the county level in a different area, and we're just kind of talking to him. I was like, I think I might want to do that, and in maybe 2, 3 years, I don't know if I want to do it right now. And unfortunately, the position open is really unfortunate circumstances, but it allowed me, I guess, the opportunity to get into it a little bit earlier. And the interesting thing about being on a board like that with supervisors is, you work with people who don't always agree with you, and you have different, and politics for whatever reason seem to be a big opinion in our society. And we have different parties of people, and they think different ways. And myself, I always try to do what's right and put those thoughts aside, and I think my fellow board members do the same. We have two of one party and one of the other. It's a three-man board, and we all work together at the end of the day to do what's best for our township. And it's taught me a lot. I mean, it's taught me, I'm not a manager in my role, but I can understand, we make decisions all the time at the township level that, half the people are upset with. No matter how you try to do it, you're going to upset half of the population, no matter what it is. And I think about that too in my professional life. And when maybe I have a manager make a decision I don't agree with, there's more to it that I don't know. And it's okay. Well, maybe it's a bigger picture that I can't see right now. Not saying that happens all the time, but it expands my thinking into, there's deeper meaning because, we make decisions that the population doesn't agree with, but it might be because there's more to it, or there's, bigger challenges down the road, and we're trying to prevent things, trying to make it better. It's definitely a unique perspective to have, especially at my stage. And there's not a lot of political people that are, under 30 years old. So it's definitely an interesting perspective to have.
Yeah, definitely not a trailblazer, but definitely somebody that's in a unique situation, right? Not just in how you got into that role, but the fact that you were like, you know what, I want to continue doing this. I see the value and I see the positive impact I can have for the area in which you live as well as the people around you. You mentioned it was cool to hear you say how you brought that back to the workplace and considering decisions, right? And how managers may be making decisions that aren't popular and how that can translate. So that's cool. Is there anything that you brought from the workplace, from your professional life into that local government seat in
I mean,
considering like the way you communicate with people or how, right, you're
yeah,
in working with potential clients and stuff like that? Sometimes just the way in which you deliver a message makes a difference. Even if
sure,
it's the same message delivered in two different ways, it can have different reactions.
sure. I mean, in the role I'm in now, obviously I'm fresher into it, like I said, 5 years, but I have a combination of navigating conversations that could be positive or negative. There's always challenges, and just being able to talk to people through those hard conversations is important. And like having a solution is a big one. So I luckily see more of those types of conversations at the township level because there's people that are upset about different types of things. And just to be quite honest, sometimes you don't always agree with it, and you might think, man, this is kind of silly or uncalled for. But at the same time, just because you think that doesn't mean it might be a whole different problem for the other person. So you really have to change your perspective and take that into consideration. And it's also taught me not to make like decisions when you're feeling different types of emotions. Sometimes you have to sit back, take it in, talk about it, and maybe even table it for another day because you're maybe angry or upset. And I try to do that where there's challenges and you're like, man, this is really upsetting me. I want to do this. And you're like, well, I'm glad I didn't do that because it wasn't the right decision to make. So, yeah, I mean, they definitely go back and forth. I mean, they're somewhat related because you're dealing with people, which you always are going to be dealing with people. But it just really opened my eyes at a a younger age to see how all the different types of people think and react to things. I mean, it helps me shape myself, I guess.
Yeah, shape yourself in every way, right? In the way you interact your professional life, in the way you interact with your personal life, and with your side hustle too. You know, you said family business, and then you've got this side hustle here. So, what was the inspiration for maybe pursuing a personal business venture? Was it that upbringing and seeing that happen, or was it just the fact that for good or for bad, sometimes I'm sure you just like to work, you like to stay busy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I always liked sales. So like I mentioned, my grandfather and my dad had excavation businesses of their own. You know, my grandfather I think started in 1962, and my dad started right after high school, which was I don't know in the 80s sometime. 85, 86, somewhere in there. Um, so obviously a long history of a successful small family business. And I knew that just to be quite honest, like I saw the toll that it took on their bodies just from working like that all the time and getting in ditches, out of ditches, getting beat up by the machinery and physical labor because like, when you're a one or two man operation, it always was a small business. You're doing everything from managing the business to, using the shovel to operating the machine. You're doing everything. And it's funny to say like I started helping my dad when I was young. I mean, I was real young, and I had the opportunity to get a glimpse in that lifestyle. And I love running equipment, out on the farm and whatnot. Don't get me wrong, but I knew it wasn't something I wanted to do to have a living. It just wasn't for me. And I actually, over COVID, while I was still in school, started selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace. I was like, man, I really like the selling thing. Like I don't know what it is. It's just fun. You get to talk to these people. You have a product they want. You get to negotiate, and then both parties walk away most of the time happy. Like it's a cool scenario. So I started I sell tracks and attachments for equipment. So it's something related to what I know, but it's something I like to do more, in selling. And I started that back in I think 2020. And I actually had a junk removal business at the same time. And again, I just wasn't something I wanted to do all the time. I didn't have a passion for it, so I knew my efforts were going to be wasted, and I kind of stepped away from it and got into the sales thing here. And I think it's a combination of everything, just wanting to sell stuff. I like to stay busy. Now, as my professional career has grown and I've assumed more responsibilities as a sales engineer, I don't have the same time to put into my business, but it's still something where you make a couple bucks a month just to help out with bills or whatever. And it's I have some good customers on that end as well. It's just being diverse, I guess.
Yeah, and rounding out that skill set. I mean, that's important for anybody at any time in their career, whether that's in the first 5 years or whether somebody's looking to continue to adapt and grow and be relevant, 20 years, 30 years into their career. So, right, you've packed a lot into a short period of time, at least post college graduation, but you've been, I would say, actively developing your skill set, right, since you probably started working with that equipment with your father way back
Yeah.
when.
Yeah, I remember running my first excavator, just around the yard or whatever. I was 6 years old, so like I quite literally grew up with it. I mean, as soon as I could figure out how to use my hands right, I was in a machine, and I still use them, like I said, on the farm or whatever. But my mom taught me a lot. Is like if you get as many skills as you can, like I learned to weld, I learned to work on trucks, I got my CDL, she's like, you'll never go hungry. That was always important to me because yeah, I'm blessed with a great job and I have no intentions on ever leaving. I love where I'm at. I love the company. I love my job. I love everything about it. But you never know what life's gonna bring you. You never know what challenges you might have. You know, you just never know. There's always the unknown where um I feel like I've given myself a skill set where, yeah, if something went wrong and I couldn't be where I'm at now for whatever reason, then, you know, I can still go out there and earn a living to, take care of my family and, um, you know, take care of what I need to. And my mom really instilled that in me. Is just learn as much as you can. I mean, my neighbor was an iron worker. Hey, can you teach me how to weld? I mean, I'm not great at it, but I can figure it out. And just so many opportunities. I was never afraid to ask a question, which I think is huge. Um, it's kind of stereotypical, but quite honestly, the worst thing someone can say to you is no, or I'm not interested, or I don't want to talk about it. But I find people when you're asking questions are a lot more willing to share information than you might think. So if there's anyone out there that's like, I want to ask this one person this question because I admire their business they run, or I admire the job they have, or whatever, just ask them. I mean, just walk up to them and ask them. Because you'd probably be surprised by what they tell you.
Right, and I'll be honest, that's part of the inspiration for this whole podcast series is, right, people are willing to have a conversation with you if you ask, and they're
Yeah,
willing to impart the wisdom, thoughts, the experiences they have if you just ask. So that is the whole inspiration for all of this. So thanks for bringing that up because I think it's important, and
yeah.
I think we found the clip worthy portion of this episode. Right, build your skill set and you'll never go hungry. That's probably the title right there.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, it's so true. If you're diverse, like I said, you never know where life's going to take you or what challenges you might have. You might have an accident. You might have a family member that has an accident. You can't do the same things that you did before, and you have to change yourself to take care of what you need to. And the more you have in your tool belt, I guess maybe the more desirable you are to fulfill those things.
Yeah, and also the more you can speak to, we'll say in an interview setting. Right? If you get through that first part, the resume screening and you get to an interview, right? That is a conversation starter, and that is something that you can build on when you're responding to any, we'll say, general interview question is, well, not only did I maybe learn about some of this in school, but I've been doing some of this since I was 10, 12, 13, 14. I put it into practice. I didn't just go to school and get this degree. And really, if somebody's looking at a resume and you share that you had your own business for 2 to 3 years before you interviewed for an entry level role, that you had been a coach, right? That speaks a lot to your initiative, the ability to put the time in, and will obviously translate as well to skills that you can express in an interview. So I think that's super important.
Yeah, and managing time's a big one too. I mean, you have all these things going on and your job's demanding and coaching's demanding and whatever else your family, you have to make the right time for them that they deserve. And, being able to manage all that is important as well because, you know, you have to be satisfied in your life and in your career. That's a important thing for me. You should always be satisfied with what you're doing and happy and like I said, and passionate because like I don't know, I'm not the type that I don't like to waste my time because I know it's limited, here on earth and it might sound crazy coming from a 27-year-old, but that that's inevitable and I don't like to waste my time. I want to do something that I want to do, if that makes sense. Like I want to be there. I want to be a part of it. I don't just want to go, because I have to. I want to be there. I want to make a difference, and that's a big thing for me.
Yeah, very much so. So as we're kind of wrapping up, getting to the end here, I'll ask you it's a very general question or a very maybe a deeper response. But what is a piece of advice that you think is helpful or would be most beneficial for anyone listening right now that is either about to graduate college or is looking for that next step in their career? What's a piece of advice that you would offer them to find success, not maybe in the short term, but also in the long term?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many factors. I mean, it takes a little bit of luck and find the right place. I mean, look at my situation. What if that job was never available? I probably would have never applied again because it wasn't something that I was really comfortable with, or again, I didn't really know much about it, but it turned out being the right decision. But timing's important. That's something that you can't always control, but you can prepare yourself to be ready if the opportunity presents itself. Again, I think just being a sponge, learning as much as you can, and even if say you're graduating with a degree, and like me, for instance, I have a business degree. I don't know how to say. I mean, I use it every day because you learn how to learn through college. But at the same time, I'm in an industry where it's not really, I guess, applied, right? So you can always learn skill sets through the right opportunity. If you get into a company or start your own business and, you get in there and you're like, man, I don't really like what my degree's in and this job, I'm not really loving it. You know, See if there's other opportunities, within that company or somewhere else where, you have a passion doing this or that and just try to pursue it, show that you're willing to learn and work and, show that you're interested in taking that opportunity. Because I think something a lot of people do is maybe they don't want to share that, like, hey, I want to grow, I want opportunities. And as a manager, I'm not, again, not a manager but thinking like one. If I had a employee who I thought was comfortable or satisfied in a role, maybe you're overlooking that just because there's so many other day-to-day stuff. And if I had someone was like, hey, I'm really doing good here, I'd like to maybe see this part of the business because I really like it, then I'm thinking, well, maybe I should give that person an opportunity. And like I said, I'm no manager, but that's just how I think I would think of that situation. So just don't be afraid. Fear is obviously scary, but so is not trying to reach your goals. I'm not going to say you'll reach every single one of them, but I feel like you should try. Don't be limited by being afraid or not wanting to ask someone or maybe whatever other anxieties you might have. Just don't be afraid to do what you want to do.
Yeah, it definitely goes back to that being willing and having fear, but not being scared of approaching that fear, being willing
Yeah.
to take that constructive feedback, being willing to fail even at times, right? I don't want you to put a dollar amount to it, but I'm sure there was a pretty, in your mind, hefty price tag on that estimate that was not accurate at that time. And I'm sure that you felt really worried about it, but that led
Yeah.
to growth and it led to mentorship, which has helped get you to where you are now.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, and I just feel like I have kind of the long term mentality where, yeah, I made that mistake and it cost some money, but if I learn from it, I'll make up that difference in the future, and then I'll make it up, tenfold and just so on. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that upfront mistake or mishap, whatever you want to call it, is a little scary. But if you can take the right approach, like, I mean, I really got to dig in and learn from this and just try to never do it again. And then when I see this, I know what to do and then just think long term because like short term gets overwhelming, right? You have so many things to do. There's so much stuff on your list, but I really try to think long term in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously both are important, but sometimes people can get choked up by that day to day grind and not looking into the future where, this is past. I can move on to the next thing. You know what I mean? So it's, everyone's perspective is different. That's a big one is perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely. Right. At different parts of your career, that perspective looks a little bit different. So it's very, very important and great to share as well. I know you shouted out a couple, mentors in your life by name, your parents. I try to give everybody the opportunities or anybody else that,
Sure.
by name you would like to shout out because they've helped you get you
Yeah,
where you are
sure.
now or helping you progress at the moment.
I mean, I've like I said, I've had so many. I'm so lucky from personally, professionally, just all over the place. I mean, my family's very supportive. I'm lucky. Obviously, my wife, my now wife, from I guess about 6 months ago, but we've been together for almost 9 years. Like, without having that support person at home, through my wife and through my family, because we're all close knit, and my my whole dad's side of the family lives on our road, so like we're a close family, and everyone's supportive, and someone else that's a big personal mentor for me and has put a lot of time into me and has believed in me is his name's Joe Teagard, and he's a big mentor of mine. And I have a feeling he'll be listening to this when it's out because he's given me some life and professional advice where not many others are willing. I mean, he's the type of person that I can ask any question to, and he's going to give me an answer. It doesn't matter if I like it or not. It's what he thinks is best for me or is best for the situation, and that's big too. Is just yeah, your family's great. I mean, I've had the best, like I have the best parents I could ever ask for. I got so lucky with that, and I'm very thankful. But having other outside sources that maybe haven't known you as long or know you in a different way or know you in a different part of your life is important too. And I'm so lucky to have those types of mentors inside work, outside of work. I've had coworkers who there's so many of them that have helped me in different scenarios and have put time into me. But yeah, personally, there's just so many to name, and I know they know who they are, but those are ones in particular. A lot, like I said, family, friends. There's so many.
Yeah, that's perfect. And right, all those people listening, they probably know that they've contributed or put you in a spot to find some of the success. And it sounds like you are somebody that's going to be willing to be that mentor down the road. So paying it forward, whether that's personally or professionally, is a big thing. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that I assume that that's the mentality you're going to bring,
Oh yeah.
having known you for a shorter period of time. But
Yeah.
I definitely think that's in
I,
your future as well.
I mean, I love that, and I'd love to speak on that for a minute. I mean, I went from someone who was asking all the questions and taking that sort of time up from people, and something I try to do is, we've grown a lot at our company, and we've had some newer people, and they're great, great work ethic. They want to be there, they want to grow, and like I love helping those. I love being in a position where I can help those people as well, because yeah, 5 years isn't a lot, but I do feel like I've learned a good bit in 5 years. Obviously, I'm never going to know it all. No one ever does. There's questions every day where you're scratching your head. Man, I should ask someone about this. But I love being in a position where, maybe I'm helping a newer estimator or inside sales person, a role I've done and known pretty well where, yeah, I'll help you. Like I rarely say, I can't do that right now. Like, I always try to make time. Maybe it's not right now, give me a little bit of time, but I love doing that. And I even have, some younger family members that are like-minded like me, and I love giving them advice where I can. Obviously, it's take you have to it takes time to get to that point where you can be a mentor because you have to have the experiences. But I love having those conversations with friends or family, and they're like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" I mean, I absolutely love helping people in that way because I was given that. I want to give it back. So it's a cool thing for sure.
Yeah. All right, Ben. Well, we've come to the end here. Any final tips, words of wisdom? We'll say fortune cookie type wisdom you want to share with anybody here before we wrap
Yeah,
up.
sure. I mean, there's always going to be challenges in life, no matter what it is, personally, professionally. You're always going to have hard times and maybe question what am I doing? But if you find a passion, if you find something you really care about, and you find something you really like to do, like for me, that's sales. I love doing it. I love talking to people. I love talking to my customers, my other coworkers. I love that day to day interaction, and that's what fuels my passion to try and be successful of what I'm doing. If you can just find that passion, find that drive, write down goals. That's something I do a lot too, and I don't think enough people do it. Yeah, you can have goals in your head, right? But I don't think you're as likely to execute them. Like I have notes in my phone where I'm writing down, like I just wrote down goals for 2026, and I have a shorter list. I have short term, I have some longer term personal goals, and it's like if I see it and read it and I can, delete them or cross them off when I do it, it just makes you that much more driven to go to the next one instead of like, yeah, I'll do that this year. Especially the timing of this episode. We're right into the new year. A lot of people have resolutions. I'm not the type to do that because I'm always working on my goals. I don't want to say, oh, wait till, next month or next year. Like I'm going to work on it now. But maybe that's a word of advice. Don't wait. Just go after it. If it's something that you've been thinking about for a while, take a chance. If you want to start your own business and or if you want to go for that job, just put your application in. Just, buy the equipment, do whatever you need to because, you know, especially talking to the younger people coming out of college, you're young, you have time to recover. If you screw up, something goes wrong, you have time. If you wait until you're, you know, later on in your life, you don't have the same time to recover, and then maybe you're gonna live with regrets, and we don't want to do that either if we can help it. So, if you want something, try to go get it. I think that's my closing statement.
Yep. And if you go get it and develop those skills, you will never go hungry.
Yep,
So that's it. All right, Ben, thank you again. And everyone that's listening, make sure that if you aren't already, you follow all the socials for on obviously Classroom to Corner Office Career Talks with Chris, Spotify, Apple, everywhere you find your podcasts, and then Classroom to Corner Office on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Make sure that you tune in to the next episode of Classroom to Corner Office Career Talks with Chris.